Hi everyone, Steve Witts here, joined by Kevin Harper, and here we're back ready for our latest football betting podcast on Saturday's fixtures in English Premier League, French League One, and some discussion from the Norwegian Elite Syrian as well. How are you doing, Kev, this weekend?
Yeah, not too bad, Steve. Thanks. Looking forward to the football probably later on in the weekend, really, as opposed to Saturday. But still some opportunities for us to get stuck into.
Yeah, a bit of FA Cup action for your team. So no English League Two in action on Saturday, but you do have a few thoughts about Premier League bets and other matches there. We'll start right at the top of the card, actually. Stoke City against Leicester. You don't have a selection for this game. How do you see it going, though?
I'm not sure, to be honest. I mean, Stoke are in desperate need of a win, aren't they? To follow up their good win last week, actually. That win kind of eased the pressure that was on them. Unexpected, I guess you could say, as much as it pains me to say it as a Luton fan. But, you know, we go into an international break after this round of matches, don't we? So if they can go into that off the back of a home win, all of a sudden, the world's a good place again, isn't it? You know, they can look up when they come back from the international break. Maybe they can get, what's it called now? The Bet 365 Stadium, is it? Make that a fortress. And, you know, get back to where they usually are. Obviously, there's a spot up for grabs in the league table in 7th. You know, Everton aren't getting there this season, are they? So someone's going to claim that. And if Stoke can go on a run, it could be them. But on the flip side of that, it could be Leicester, couldn't it? If they can follow up their impressive win last week. I ain't convinced by Claude Puel. I mentioned that last week. There's no need for me to go into that again. Certainly, a win over Everton does nothing to change my mind. He needs to be a more established side than Everton, who just look absolute pony at the minute and just played into Leicester's hands like you wouldn't believe last week. I don't think Stoke are going to do that here. I think Stoke will be defensively solid enough, but there won't be no space in behind the Stoke defence. So Leicester are going to have to do something out of the ordinary to win the game. I'm not sure they've got that in them. Maybe the smartest bet is unders, but it's just not a game that really jumps out at me from a betting point of view, to be honest.
Yeah, it looks a tricky one, that one, I must say. Now, a couple of matches you do have bets in. We start with Huddersfield against West Brom, and bookies can't really separate either team here. I mean, Huddersfield, very slight favourites, but not a lot in it. West Brom, perhaps a little bit under the radar. They come into this match in a bit of poor form. No win in 8 games for Tony Pulis's men. Yes, they have faced a few difficult sides during this period, but has their poor form gone a little bit unnoticed, Kev?
Not from me, Steve, no. Maybe nationally it has. Maybe there's just this automatic assumption that West Brom are going to be fine and finishing mid-table. I disagree. I actually think they're in a relegation battle here, and they could be plunged further into it with a defeat in this game. Huddersfield, they might be new to the league, but that doesn't mean to say that they should be disgraced or anything like that, or written off. You look at their home form, and only Tottenham have been to the John Smith Stadium and won this season. Well, West Brom are no Tottenham, that's for sure. You know, Man United have been there and got turned over, and for as bad as United were that day, they still needed beating, and Huddersfield did that with no problems whatsoever. They also beat a Newcastle side who, as we saw in midweek, can be pretty resolute for long periods as well. And a couple of, you know, eye-catching draws. I think it's Leicester against Southampton were the other 2 games that were there, wasn't it? And, you know, they're tricky games at any level. So they're a decent side at home. But what's more appealing is that they're very, very hard to break down. And against a West Brom side who struggle for goals at the best of times, albeit they got a couple last week. I think Huddersfield can keep a clean sheet, and I think there's enough in there, especially now Mounier's back, to grab something at the other end. As long as Huddersfield defend set pieces well, and generally under David Wagner, that's exactly what they've done. I don't see West Brom scoring, which guarantees us at least a push. And if Huddersfield find the back of the net, that might well be enough.
Yeah, Huddersfield draw no bet. David Wagner certainly composing a fine tune there, isn't he, at Huddersfield right now, I must say. But just talk about West Brom before we move on again. I mean, is this a sort of match which Tony Pulis might fancy his chances of attacking, you know, head on here, because he's facing a sort of supposed weaker team? Like the Brighton fixture earlier in the year, they went there and no one would have expected Brighton to beat West Brom 3-1. And that was probably because West Brom were a bit too open that day. Do you see them coming in a positive frame of mind, or will it be the usual West Brom tactics?
Yeah, I don't think they'll be that positive. Yeah, that game might have affected them, but they haven't been positive since, have they? And it's not in Pulis's makeup to be positive. If Tony Pulis put a team out in my back garden, the curtains would be drawn and glued together. I can't watch them. I don't think this would be a particularly great watch, but I don't suppose that'll matter one jot to the Huddersfield fans if they're walking down that ginormous hill outside their ground with the 3 points in the bag. So, no, I don't see them being too offensive. I expect them to revert to type, try and deal with set pieces and score that way. But I think Huddersfield have got more than enough to combat that.
So Huddersfield drawn out bet there. Your second selection in the Premier League on Saturday is Southampton against Burnley under 2.25 goals. Now saying to favourites on the minus 0.75 Asian handicap here. Both teams, on the face of it, have struggled to score goals this season, so the unders looks a pretty sensible solution, Kev. Obviously, you're not expecting a classic.
No, I'm not, and I've got a Monopoly set downstairs, but I wouldn't even use the money in that to back Southampton minus 0.75. Whoever stuck those odds up is just ridiculous. This is a Burnley side that's been to Tottenham, been to Liverpool, and been to Chelsea, and they've avoided defeat in all three. And obviously they went to Chelsea and they won. We'll let them off the City game. I mean, City are unbelievable at the minute, aren't they? And they ran into Kevin De Bruyne on his finest afternoon. So there's absolutely no shame in that. But we saw in midweek, well, I say midweek on Monday night, what Burnley are all about. They'll keep it tight at the back. They'll see if they can nick one up front. But they're still devoid of natural goal scorers. And as it turned out, it was Hendrick who scored for them on Monday night, wasn't it? Southampton just never convinced me in front of goal. That's against any side, really, let alone one that can defend as well as Burnley. I don't really see why Burnley would push for push and be open and try and win this game sort of in an attacking style. They don't need to, really. That win on Monday night was perfect. They can go there now, try and get a point, and if they can nick something, then happy days. But a point would be a perfectly acceptable result. It would keep them above Southampton in the table, keep them in the top half of the table going into what's likely to be a pressurised international break, isn't it? Because I would imagine Sean Dyche is going to be rather in demand over the next 2 weeks. So it'll be interesting to see if they can fend off approaches for him. And if they do, and Burnley get something out of this game, then they'll be in a good position. I don't see an avalanche of goals. Both sides, like you say, struggle for goals. And they don't set up to score them, do they? Let's be fair. They set up to contain the opposition. And if they can grab something at the other end, then happy days. But I wouldn't say this will finish 0-0, but I certainly don't think it's going to finish 3-3.
Yeah, under 2.25 goals there. That's your second selection in the Premier League on Saturday. Let's talk about the evening kick-off, West Ham against Liverpool. And you just said Sean Dyche there is linked with a lot of jobs recently. One possible job he might end up getting is maybe the West Ham one if Slaven Bilic is dismissed sooner rather than later. A lot of pressure on him. There's also been plenty of pressure on Jurgen Klopp this season at Liverpool. I mean, the visitors are 1.6 favourites, which perhaps is understandable. West Ham don't seem to play very well at the London Stadium, do they? How do you see this one going?
Well, that Monopoly money that I'm not putting nowhere near Southampton is not going nowhere near Liverpool either. This should be an end-to-end game, shouldn't it, to be fair? If you've got BT Sport, then you're on a winner on Saturday evening. Two sides who just cannot defend for love nor money. Now, whether West Ham can score or not is a different story, but you have to be a pretty poor side these days not to be able to score against this Liverpool team, particularly when Liverpool visit your own ground. You only have to go back to the last time they were in London a couple of weeks ago. Tottenham taught them a new arsehole. A couple of other sides have done that as well, Man City being one of them. Okay, West Ham's not in that league, but we wouldn't necessarily need them to be. I haven't decided whether to pull the trigger on over 2.75 goals yet. But if I was to bet on the game, it would be that. I expect both sides to use the old adage that attack is the best form of defence, particularly as neither have got a defence. And I'd be surprised if there's only 3 goals in this game. But there was a midweek game, wasn't there? Liverpool did play in the Champions League, and that is slightly concerning. And if Coutinho's not fit, maybe they'll take it a little easy. I'm not sure.
Yeah, sort of leaning towards the overs there, but no official selection right now. Thanks very much for your thoughts on the Premier League on Saturday. got a really big, sort of juicy-looking card on Sunday there. 4 big fixtures, certainly a couple of massive ones. We're looking forward to talking about those in tomorrow's podcast. But best of luck with those 2 selections for Saturday, Kev.
3 of them are big, certainly. Yeah, one of them not so much, but at least the 2 games that are live on the telly on Sunday are worthy of the name Super Sunday. Let's head across to France. Obviously, it's going to be a busy day in the division, and I believe you've got one selection for us.
Yeah, struggling for selections really, I must admit, on Saturday. But there is one that definitely stands out to me, and it's in the Troyes against Strasbourg match. And we've talked a lot about these 2 teams in podcasts this season, especially Strasbourg recently, and they're just in that mould of sort of being involved in matches that are high scoring. It's been a while since any clean sheet was seen in any of their fixtures, which is a bit unusual for French football. But yeah, last week's game went exactly as I expected it against Angers. 2-2 draw, end-to-end football. It could have ended 4-4. And bear in mind, Angers are not particularly attacking side, so they managed to suck them into this shootout. Troyes, well, I think they're the worst team in the division. The league table doesn't say that right now, but they are a weak outfit. Both teams should fancy their chances of winning, really, because this was obviously these are 2 new promoted teams. It was a League 2 fixture last season. Troyes won it 4-0, actually. I remember at the time it was a real shock. No one expected it, and the odds are very similar today as they were last season. I'm not saying Troyes are going to win again, but it wouldn't actually surprise me if they did get a victory here, because Strasbourg have no right to be away favourites in a League 1 match yet. No way. So yeah, I think a high-scoring draw. It wouldn't be surprised if it's another 2-2, Kev, to be honest, or maybe someone can nick it 3-2. But over 2.25 goals at I think that's around the 1.85 mark. And if you really want to be very brave, you could actually stick a nugget on something like over 4.5, around 8-1, because it is one of those sort of fixtures. If there's an early goal, it could be really end to end, because no team should have fear here. They will see it as a chance to get 3 points either way, one way or the other.
Yeah, it does look a solid bet. It's a truncated card on Saturday in that division. 4 more matches take place on Sunday, and only 4 other games on Saturday, and they've all got short price favourites, and nothing really appeals there, do they?
No, I mean, I was tempted by Nantes. I mean, I'll be honest, I don't see a lot of goals in any fixture, particularly apart from the Strasbourg one. PSG are without Neymar, which means alarm bells already. They drew 0-0 away against Montpellier when he missed out a few weeks ago. Montpellier should really have enough against Amiens, but I think there's a risk of a 0-0 there. Nantes against Toulouse. Well, I think Toulouse. I mean, I think you saw more goals in that Luton-Stevenage game the other week than in Toulouse's last 7 or 8 fixtures combined. So you know, there's not going to be much action going on there. Again, a 0-0 contender. So yeah, it's tricky. So I just stuck with the one pick that I really quite fancy. And Monaco are with missing a lot of players to injury. They do tend to combat injuries well, I must say. Great team for doing that, but you wouldn't want to be backing them against Guingamp on a -1.5 handicap when they're missing 5-6 key players, including Thomas Lemar, who is their best player by a long way, in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely not. We'll revisit that division in our podcast ahead of Sunday's matches. But we'll just finish this particular episode by going to Norway. You don't have a pick in the one game, but it's only right that we mention it because Molde are looking to delay the inevitable, aren't they? And force Rosenborg to win the title on Sunday. They host Christiansen. Are they going to keep the title race alive?
They should do. Yeah, all eyes on this. Rosenborg could be crowned champions if Molde don't obviously do the business here. So, but they should. It's a local derby, I must add here. So a bit of a local rivalry. Should be an intense battle. It ended 1-0 on the opening day of the season to Molde. So Christiansen will be after revenge. Look, Molde are one of them teams. They are not as good as their league position, in my opinion. They must have won about 5 or 6 games by injury time goals this season, which I suppose is typical of Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, isn't it? He always did that as a player. But how much of it is luck? How much of it is skill? I think there's a bit of both sometimes. Certain teams do keep going right until the end, but in their instance, I can't help but feel some of it is an awful lot of luck. I think 3 or 4 of the goals have been from literally last-ditch corners. I mean, what are the chances of scoring a corner right late in the game? You know, you really should not be conceding against that. So if you want an interesting sort of side bet, maybe you could bet on Mulder to score in the last 10 minutes or something. They do rack up so many late goals. Being an intense fixture, Kristiansund fighting for their lives. Big game for them. Wouldn't be surprised actually if they got something, but you're probably looking at Mulder to win by 1 goal with a late winner, Kev, I would say. But the odds look about right in this instance. So I'll leave this one alone and wait until Sunday in this league to hopefully get some bets.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll discuss Rosenborg and their potential title challenge in Sunday's podcast, if indeed it's still alive. Okay, Steve, thanks very much for your thoughts on France and on Norway. Good luck with that bet. Very short podcast this evening. Not too many matches for the pair of us to go at. An awful lot of games coming up on Sunday, though, so expect a much longer edition ahead of Sunday's games, where we've got the Premier League, Liga, the Norway top flight, and 3 massive MLS playoff games, which I'm really looking forward to getting stuck into. But until then, Steve, all the best, and we'll catch up tomorrow.
Yeah, this was very much the starter, wasn't it, really, in terms of main courses this weekend. I think tomorrow's certainly the sort of steak round, isn't it? You know, much more meat on the plate for Sunday's fixtures. So we look forward to discussing about those. See you around, everyone. Take care. Hope you can join us on Sunday. Goodbye.